No cold open today, I just want to acknowledge the fact that I got a very cool new camera with some fantastic new lenses, so enjoy some of my favorite shots instead of the normal intro. What's up, houses and spouses? Welcome to another review. Today we're going to be talking about 76280 Spider-Man vs. Sandman Final Battle, which is just rolls right off the tongue, doesn't it? Really fast though, before we get into the details of the review, I put a poll up on the community tab about what big LEGO project you guys want to see me undertake first. This is going to be a proper mock building and customizing and modifying an official set for my city, and it's going to probably take the form of the first real meaningful series on my channel. So if you'd be interested in helping decide what we do, go ahead and check that out. I'll probably leave that open for about another week before I take the decision to move on with it. That established, let's get into the review, starting with the building process. This set's build experience is aggressively fine. I wouldn't describe it as something that is amazing or bad. It just kind of is. The good news is that it's technically solid and the building techniques are good. They are the right techniques to use for what they're doing. The unfortunate thing is that if you have built any of these sets previously, you've already built Sandman. Congrats. And if you built any of these sets, you built the base already. Congrats. The set doesn't do anything bad, but it also doesn't do anything new, and that's the biggest strike against it. I'm not going to dock points, per se, but I am going to be candid about the fact that I can't recommend this if you're looking to learn new techniques. Realistically speaking, that means this is a perfectly average building experience, so I'm going to go ahead and rate it at a 5. Moving right along, we have the minifigures to talk about. Spider-Man and Electro are both solid minifigures. I can't really complain about them, except that both of them are minifigures that have been in previous sets, and for those of you who are aware of the elephant in the room, this is even worse than it sounds. Spider-Man has 2 other sets to his name, the first of which is 3 years old, and you definitely have this minifigure already. If you like Spider-Man enough to buy this set, you bought one of the sets that this minifigure comes in. By comparison, Electro only comes in 1 other set, but again, if you're buying this set, or considering it even, you should have this minifigure already. It's especially funny to compare the difference in the brick-built accessories for the Electro that comes in this set with the Electro that we got previously, because yeah, it speaks for itself here. Because both of these minifigures are minifigures that you should have already, Lizard necessarily carries the set. I will say that I am quite pleased with this minifigure. It captures what I remember about the Amazing Spider-Man Lizard the most. I appreciate the inclusion of leg printing, and the scales all over look really, really good. The tail does do a little bit to detract from the way that the printing flows from the legs onto the torso, but it's not enough to meaningfully dock points from the minifigure about. Honestly, this is why I bothered to buy this set. I love the Amazing Spider-Man, and Lizard is probably my favorite Spider-Man villain, so I'm happy with this minifigure, and it brings some much needed value to the set. I'm gonna rate minifigures overall at a 6 out of 10. Now here is actually where I'm going to break form just a little bit, and we're actually going to talk about play and display at the same time. A trade-off that I've witnessed with LEGO sets fairly consistently is that as one of these goes up, the other tends to go down. Now, to be fair, larger sets tend to involve a lot of scene play in addition to their display value, which longtime viewers will know that I am a fierce defender of. However, not every set can claim that distinction. This set may be the single best set that I have ever built to demonstrate that necessary trade-off. In failing to commit to one and drop the other, neither actually turns out terribly good. To start with play value, the Sandman figure does feature excellent articulation, like all of the other brick-built action figures. However, he's constrained pretty heavily by the display base that he's placed on. Both the girder and walkway are situated too close to his body for him to be meaningfully posed while he's between them. In fact, if you pay attention here, to be able to get his torso visible to the camera, I had to stick his arm through that gantry. This unnecessarily restricts the amount of posing that you can do, and honestly really restricts effective scene play. However, the reverse is also true. In leaving space for some degree of posing, the base is devoid of detail. it actually feels very empty looking at it from either side. The display value is simplified down in the attempt to maintain some level of play, and the play value is dialed back in an attempt to make something that could reasonably sit on a desk as a display piece. In failing on both fronts, the set loses value that would have been easily recaptured by choosing to focus less on either option. Personally, I would not choose to display this set, and I'm not really interested in playing with it either. I do think that the play value is slightly better than the display value though, so I'm going to give it a 3 for play and a 2 for display. All of that established, it means that we can move on to our final score of not knowing yet, because we have to talk about something else. You can actually see it if you look carefully, right above my shoulder here. The real intended value of this set clearly is derived from its ability to be combined with set 76261 Spider-Man Final Battle. Which means before we can put a final score on this set, we actually need to talk about that one really quickly. That means it's time for the first ever lightning reviews. What is up, ladies and people who aren't that? Today we are doing our first ever flash review with 76261 Spider-Man Final Battle. This set had a surprisingly solid 8 out of 10 building experience for me. I was not expecting to want to keep it, but actually really enjoyed putting it together, and I'm probably going to hold on to it to display. I would rate the minifigure selection a 9.5 out of 10, because almost every single one of these minifigures is brand new for this set. Unfortunately, the play value is pretty low. I'd give it a 3 out of 10 because it's a very busy model and very fiddly, but the display value is fantastic. I love how many moments from the movie they've managed to cram in here. I'm particularly fond of Andrew Garfield Spider-Man saving MJ. That brings our final total to a score of 7.6, or better than the majority of LEGO sets. I really like this set and give it my wholehearted seal of approval. Back to the set at hand, the important thing to consider here is whether or not it improves this absolutely fantastic set. Something that I'm not too confident it's going to do, considering its current rating. I don't think that this set strongly alters the building experience of Spider-Man Final Battle, because really all it is building more, not better or worse, so I'm not going to modify its score based on that. In terms of minifigures, Sandman and Lizard were the only two missing from the larger set, which this does round out that roster. I do think that that improves the value of the overall set. I'm going to give it an extra point for that. Both play values are 3 independent of each other, and I would still rate them that way once they're combined. I don't think that this meaningfully changes anything about the way that you play with the larger set, and I don't think that Sandman's posability is much improved here because of the way that his torso fits into the top of Lady Liberty, so I'm not going to change that score at all. Finally, we have display value, and this is going to be a controversial take, but I actually really dislike the way that Sandman fits on top of the larger model here. He may be significantly fewer pieces, but because he's human-shaped, he takes up a lot more visual space, and I personally feel like he detracts from the much more detailed and beautiful model at hand below him by virtue of being on top and bigger than everything else. The perfect score for display that Spider-Man Final Battle has is partially due to its perfectly balanced composition. Even adding Lizard threatens to overturn that. Sandman is way too much. For that, I'm going to deduct half a point. Elephant in the room addressed, we can reveal our final score of 4.1. I do want to acknowledge here that a significant portion of value is an abstract in the form of nostalgia. If you're someone who was raised on the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man or the Amazing Spider-Man, then this is potentially the only run that you will ever get for those movies, barring the early Studio Spider-Man line. And there is something to be said for the value of getting to have all of these iconic characters that weren't originally in the licensed LEGO line. If you're a Spider-Man diehard, I would potentially bump this score by 1 or even 2 points. That value is something. But from a pure LEGO fan perspective, I can't recommend this set. Personally, I'm going to add Lizard to the display on the Final Battle, but I'm probably going to put Sandman in storage, or potentially integrate him into my city. I just don't think he works as part of this particular model. That about wraps up my thoughts on 76280 Spider-Man vs. Sandman Final Battle. It's not a terrible set by any stretch of the imagination. This is not the Hoopty, and I doubt we're going to see a set that lives up to that legacy for a very long time, but I also don't think that I can strongly recommend it to you. As always, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate the patience as I have been on hiatus the last couple of months. I have a lot of stuff planned for this year, including some larger original content. Again, if you're interested in determining which of those projects I tackle first, consider going and voting on that poll on the community tab. If you want to support me, I do have a Patreon, link to that in the description, but also liking, commenting, and subscribing is huge for a channel this size. I'm incredibly grateful for the support. I look forward to seeing you next week.